Wednesday was a big day for Canon customers with the announcement of the Canon C400, the first cinema camera in 4 years, and it turned out to be a big seller. Also released on the same day was the Canon RF 35mm f1.4, a lens that's been craved and demanded by customers going all the way back to 2019, and it proved to be a big seller. Then later that same day, Panasonic unveiled the GH7, showing why they're the king of micro four thirds. But despite some pretty big announcements on Wednesday, some did feel, well, how should I say, a little bit disappointed. Well, that was a deception. Major? No R5 Mark II? And Deke was a little bit more direct. I'm not interested in cinema cameras. I thought the big announcement was supposed to be for the Canon EOS R5 Mark II. The rest of this video is dedicated to Canon, Nikon, and Panasonic. I've got updates on the date and availability of the R5 Mark II, and not the specification for the Canon EOS R1. But now let's turn our attention to the Nikon Z6 Mark III. As I said on Friday, many expect that the Nikon Z6 Mark III will be coming soon, with Nikon rumors offering up next week as the next possible time frame. Though these specifications, they do have a few red flags, leading me to believe that these aren't necessarily leaked specifications. Some of them might be leaked specifications, but they're mixed in with a bunch of, well, projections or forecasts or people passing off what they think is going to be in the Nikon Z6 Mark III as specifications. And for that reason, I'm not getting too excited about the camera. However, as soon as I do get solid leaked information on the Nikon Z6 Mark III, you'll be the first to know. After all, we recently nailed the R1 development announcement, the C400 price and specs, as well as the Panasonic GH7 price and specs. But now, let's turn our attention to the Canon EOS R1, a camera that for the longest time was touted as the master of everything and a jack of all trades, although I think that slogan, that moniker, is actually more appropriate for the Canon EOS R5 Mark II, but more on that later. The Canon EOS R1 was supposed to be announced earlier this year, but from what we're hearing now, the announcement is going to come July, next month. And as far as availability, well, nothing has really changed there. I'll get to the new specification that I have on this camera, but again, I want to quote my source. The R1 will be available at the Olympics in the hands of professionals, but for us regular folk, we will only be able to get our hands on the Canon EOS R1 after the summer. And I'm told from a reliable source that the Canon EOS R1 will be able to shoot well above the Canon EOS R3's 195 frames per second. So let's unpack that a little bit. It's true, the Canon EOS R3 can now shoot at 195 frames per second. Just think about that for a moment. That's blindingly fast. It's very fast. Now, there is a tiny caveat in there. You can only do it for up to 50 shots. But still, just imagine just holding down that shutter button for a fraction of a second. You could easily end up with 50 or even 100 shots. That's an awful lot. That's an awful lot to sift through. And there might be certain scenarios where this might be very useful. But to go well above 195 frames per second, wow, that's staggeringly fast. If the autofocus is able to keep up, if the image processor, the image sensor, as well as that new accelerator chip is able to keep up, well, in certain sports situations, that could be huge. I mean, that would guarantee you the shot. That's pretty impressive. What is the limit? 240, 360? I don't know. I don't even want to guess, because even I find 30 frames per second to be very fast. 60 frames per second fast, but 195? What I would like to know, if you have the R3 and you've used 195 frames per second, please help us understand what scenarios you've used that in and why it's a big deal. And if you have used it and you don't think it's a big deal, let us know that as well. But now it's time to turn our attention to the biggest camera announcement of 2024, and that's the Canon EOS R5 Mark II, dubbed as a wow camera by a proven source. The same source that told us about the R1 development announcement before anybody else. This same source also said, for all those who are undecided to have the R5 or the R5C, they will no longer have any doubts. And that reliable source told me that the Canon EOS R5 Mark II would be announced in July. But when? Early July, like the Canon EOS R5 Mark I, middle of July, or late July? Well, according to a news source, which has yet to be validated, the Canon EOS R5 will be announced in mid-July, and it will ship after the Olympics. We're already into June with 3 big announcements, and yes, they are big announcements, even if you're waiting for the R5 Mark II. We got the first Canon cinema camera since the C70 4 years ago. We finally got the RF 35mm f1.4, and we got an update to Panasonic in the GH7. But next month is going to be a very big month because we get the announcement of the Canon EOS R5 Mark II and the Canon EOS R1, and that's a big deal. And then we won't have to wait much longer to be able to start receiving the EOS R5 Mark II. It's going to start shipping in August, and it's going to start shipping right after the Olympics. And that's really good news. And if my previous statement caught you off guard about the R5 Mark II being, well, a bit of a master of everything, a jack of all trades, and that's what I'm saying here, not what others are saying. That the R5 Mark II is going to have video capabilities and stills capabilities where you're just going to look at this camera and go, you know what, I don't care about an R5C. If you're a video shooter, the R5 Mark II is going to be definitely the master of everything. But for my audience, I got to tell you, I've done enough surveys to understand that the vast majority of you, some 60 to 80% of you, are photographers. That's what you do. But some 60% of that group of photographers also shoot video. It's a very small minority today that just shoot stills and don't shoot any video. And it's also a very small minority that just shoot video. So to have the R5 Mark II to be much more capable in terms of video shooting capabilities, that is going to be a big deal. That will mean this is far more of a master of everything than the Canon EOS R1 with a 24 megapixel sensor. The R5 Mark II is going to be able to do 8K like it can with the Mark I. The only question is, how far up will it be able to go? 60, 120 frames per second? Is it going to have internal ND filters, mechanical ND filters like the C400? Or might Canon do something a little bit different and give us electronic ND filters? It's hard to say, but from what my source told me and the conversations I had with them, the information I haven't put out there yet, is that the R5 Mark II is going to be an impressive camera. It really does seem to fit the master of everything, jack of all trades, rather than the R1, which is more of a niche camera, a very specialized camera for sports and certain wildlife photography situations. But for others who shoot wildlife that need higher resolution at 45 megapixels with a stacked full frame sensor, well, the R5 Mark II is looking to be a pretty impressive camera. And I'm not the only one saying this. Since I published this information, Canon Rumors has pretty much stated the same. We are extremely confident that the R5 Mark II will be officially announced sometime in July, with availability starting in late August. The R5 Mark II has a lot of new video-focused features, and in some ways will go beyond the capabilities of the EOS R5C. From what we've seen and been told, we don't think a follow-up to the EOS R5C is in the cards. And I understand some have doubts. Maybe you have doubts as to my sources, my credibility, my reliability. But let's go back and take a look at some of the predictions or forecasts, or nay, let's say actual information I've provided you over the past couple of months. First off, the Canon EOS R1. I was the first one. Nobody else was able to predict the exact time of the development announcement, and I did that some 14 hours ahead of time. And then there was the Canon C400. I almost said C100, the C400, back on Wednesday. Some, again, 14 hours ahead of that announcement, I came out with detailed leak specifications that were 100% bang on, including the price. And people doubted that. I had one person saying, you know what? Nobody else is saying this out there, Simon. I don't believe this. It seems too good to be true. And, well, it turned out to be 100% bang on. Not one thing was wrong. I got it right down to the penny. I also got the Canon RF 35mm f1.4, the exact pricing on that lens, and the Panasonic GH7. I actually had a few customers saying, hey, where is anything on Panasonic? Clearly you're not focused on Panasonic, you're just focused on Canon. Well, that person had said that after I did a live stream about the Panasonic GH7, getting the exact announcement time and the date, and starting off with a whole bunch of leaked specifications on the GH7, which again proved to be correct, and the price right down to the penny. So, 3 things that I nailed. Well, actually, it's far more than 3 things when you account the specifications, the price of 3 different cameras, as well as some lenses. I've got some really good and reliable sources, but things will still move, and we just have to understand whenever you're talking about information that is being leaked out ahead of an actual announcement, things can change, dates can move, and we've seen that from Nikon, Panasonic, and Canon. For some reason, things were delayed some 3 months or 4, I would say actually 4 to 6 months. It depends on what other cameras are coming out and when. And I'm not exactly sure the reason behind this, whether it's materials or parts shortages or something else, because it's not just Canon, it's everybody. But now let's turn our attention to deals of the week. $28.99 for the Canon EOS R5 Mark I. 1 month before the R5 Mark II is supposed to be announced, and its closest competitor, the Nikon Z8, is still $500 off. The R6 Mark II, still $500 off at $19.99, and many other incredible deals can be found on cameras, lenses, and accessories. And I have links down below for all these deals, as well as I think some 20 different cameras and lenses. It's really incredible. There's been so much information coming out, so many new announcements, and the sales are absolutely incredible. I've also got the pre-order links for several products that were recently announced, such as the C400, the RF 35mm f1.4, and the Panasonic GH7. And if you do use these links, I've got them for I've got them for Adorama, B&H, and Amazon.com in the descriptions down below. And if you do use these links, I could make anywhere from 3 to 12% back, and it's greatly appreciated if you do that, because that's what's allowed this channel to grow so quickly, to be able to purchase really good solid lenses like the 100 to 500, the 200 to 800, the 50mm f1.2, and the 35mm f1.4. A big thanks to all of you that have used my affiliate links in the past. It means an awful lot to me. And if you do use these links, they don't take you off onto some sort of strange affiliate link or site with forms you have to fill in or with codes. Not at all. You just click on the links down below. It takes you directly to those sites with the camera listed or the lens or the accessory. But now it's time to turn our attention to Panasonic. Some people thought I forgot about Panasonic. Well, I certainly haven't. You see, we got the GH7. That was a big surprise. Many of us were hoping to see that camera announced, and what that tells you is Panasonic sees that as a far more important camera at this point than the S1 or the S1R or even the S1H successor. Although I know, Mark, you would like to see, I know Mark, we've got 2 Marks here. I'm talking about Mark Jobe. He's been hounding me about the the S1H Mark II, and we've heard very little. We had some really solid stuff, and then our sources went dark. Panasonic has really delayed some announcements, and I don't know why it is, but we've had some recent publications from the financial press talking about how Panasonic is in trouble. The CEO has admitted to this, and they're looking at actually exiting some businesses or spinning them off. Now, there was no mention of Lumix being included in that bunch, and I think that's why we're seeing the GH7 being announced now as ahead of the S1, the S1R, or the S1H successor, because the GH7 is going to sell a whole lot better. So I really do wish Panasonic a lot of success here, but the leading indicators, at least mine, don't look as promising. The nice thing about you using my affiliate links is I get to see how strong certain sales are. And this past week, where we got 3 big announcements, I can tell you that by far the biggest seller, and this shouldn't be a surprise, is the RF 35mm f1.4, followed by the C400. Even at $8,000, this camera has sold very well at B&H and Adorama based on my links. Not as well as the Nikon Z8 when it came out, but not far off it. But I didn't get a single Panasonic GH7 pre-order, despite having a live stream, despite having leaked specifications and pricing on that camera. I do hope it does sell well. I really do. I do think that taking too long to come up with a phase detect autofocus system created an awful lot of noise, and for those looking at a solid camera, it kind of scared them off a little bit. I really do hope that Lumix is not on the chopping block, that we do get to see the Panasonic S1H Mark II announced pretty soon, maybe September, maybe earlier, but I'm really looking forward to seeing this camera. Panasonic has always been a leader when it comes to video specifications and what they put in their cameras, but one thing we've seen over the past several years is that Canon and Nikon have stepped up their development and their innovation. Their cameras are pretty impressive. Just look at the R5, the Mark I, the Z8, the Z9. These companies have been doing a really good job, so it's all that much harder for Panasonic to come out with a camera that's going to leapfrog these and get noticed. And at less than 5% market share, this is kind of a do or die moment. Panasonic has to release some impressive cameras. And from what I've got here, I don't have a lot of, well, leaked specifications, nothing that's validated that I can provide you with, nothing I can give you in terms of hope other than we are expecting more announcements from Panasonic this year, and that S series, that high-end S series, well, it's long overdue. 5.5 years since we got the announcement of the S1 and the S1R, and it's now 5 years since we got the announcement of the S1H Mark II. It's do or die. Who was it? Alfred Lord Tennyson that said, "It is not us to question, it is merely to do or die." Something like that. But, you know, this is a do or die moment for Panasonic. So I really do expect us to get some sort of big announcement by Panasonic. But we'll just have to wait and see. And a big thanks for you sticking around to the very end. I really do appreciate it. It does take a lot of time and effort to create these videos, and it's very much appreciated that you've stuck around to the end, for your commenting, liking, for participating. I was just recently out in Vancouver, British Columbia. I haven't even unpacked all my stuff yet. I haven't even looked at all the footage I shot, which I will start sharing with you in future videos. I had a really good time out there. I just love the place. The location's great, but most of all, the climate. And it was really tough leaving yesterday because the weather was absolutely incredible. Crystal blue skies. And when I say crystal blue, you could see 50, 60 kilometers in the distance. The mountains, they were very sharp and distinct. You could see the white caps. The best day ever, and we had to leave. Our plane left on time. We arrived in Toronto, I'd say over an hour earlier. We really got in soon. And I got home, the time I got home, like everything, picking up our luggage, getting a ride home, I actually got home just a few minutes after the actual scheduled landing time. So I was excited to produce a video. I was too tired last night. I scripted it, and this is the video that was an end result. I just got some more information this morning telling me that more information is expected next week. The source told me that they should be able to provide me some more information next week. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if more information leaks out this weekend, because after all, with the announcement coming next month, the middle of next month, for the Canon EOS R5 Mark II and the Canon EOS R1, the rumor is right now that they're both happening on the same day. Well, we should start to get some more information falling out right now, because the cameras are start showing up in the hands of other people to do testing. And once that happens, things leak out like crazy. That's when we start to have 3 or 4 videos in a single day. So definitely go ahead and subscribe and choose all notifications if you want to stay up to date on all the latest and greatest. And don't forget to, well, or consider following me on Twitter, because a lot of times when I'm busy, especially when I'm traveling like I was last week, well, that's when I tweet certain information out, just because I don't have the time to do a separate video. But thank you so much for tuning in. Have yourself a great day, a great weekend, and we'll see you again soon. Very soon. Cheers. Bye-bye now.